There it
We'll
is.
have to do
We're
that
streaming.
when you get going when we get going live here. Hold up that
Beautiful.
book and I'll snap it. But okay, let me see if I hear the echo. We know we're good. We got a nice audience, 75 waiting, and that'll pick
Will I
up.
be able to share my screen? I have some stuff. I wanted to just do like a very quick reintroduction of like who is Anastasia, what are the books for anybody who doesn't know, and then just kind of go from there if that's cool
That'd
with
be
you guys. I
awesome.
just have a couple slides. Okay, awesome. And if you
Yeah,
see
I'm
me
getting
looking
all
down
sorts
into
of
this
echo.
angle, I have my monitor right here, so I try to maintain eye contact, but you guys are
I
like
yeah,
slightly down.
I always do that too, and it kind of I always look like I'm looking down, but when I keep eye contact, and I just can't focus on the camera. It just seems a little too fake, you know.
I'm trying.
I need to
Yeah.
I need to talk to a face.
Yeah, I've got three monitors in front of me, so I'm looking everywhere. I'm managing a lot when we do these streams. Okay,
Gotcha.
great, guys. Well, it looks like we're live. I'm gonna go ahead and start the show. Here we go. Stoked to have you back on, Gabe.
I'm very excited to be here, man. This is a show that I'm very glad to just be on. I love what you guys do. I have a lot of
Great.
respect for this show.
Thank
Uh,
you.
Appreciate that so much, brother. And yeah, it's been too long since we've hung in person. We need to rectify that and have a good hang again.
That will be rectified. We it certainly will.
Okay, here we go. And boom, we're back for another episode of Alfacast. I'm Mike Winter, and I'm here as always with the illumined Dr. Bear Paul Lando, coming to you live and direct from the great state of Jefferson, where freedom still reigns supreme, up here on the beautiful Smith River in the peak of summer, enjoying life, swimming in the river and playing in the gardens and hiking in the mountains. Life is grand here, and we are blessed to be talking about my favorite book series of late for the last 3 years since I started reading it, the Ringing Cedars books, the great knowledge from the Russian mystic Anastasia. We have Gabriel Miguel with us today to go deep, deep, deep into this work and how important it is for today with all the madness of the fiction out there. We want to thank everybody who's joined us on the private platform on alfavedic.com, stimulating conversations as always going down there. So if you haven't looked into that yet, go to alfavedic.com/join us and join us in the private as we continue the revolution of moving forward into the new reality, which is what we'll be discussing today. And I will be out in Australia at the Living Free Festival with our homie Tom Barnett at the end of August. I'm looking forward to that. Cal Washington, Alex Zek, and a ton of other badasses will be out there talking about what we're doing here at Alfa Vedic and how we are providing an example for a new means to do business and to live. So excited for that. You can go to the livingfreefestival.com for more information on that. Dr. Bear, anything to bring up to the community before we welcome our friend Gabriel to the show?
I was just gonna caution you when you're in Australia, be careful of the men in the gray suits, which is what we used to call white sharks when I was growing up surfing in Northern California. The Australian coast where I almost immigrated in my younger years to, looking for a good surf. Also a white sharky area. So yeah, bring your board, but be careful.
Oh, thanks for that. And I had that URL wrong. Excuse me. It'll be in the show notes below. It's the livingfreefestival.org. .org. Use Alfa Vedic for 10% off your tickets there. I actually got notices from many Alfa Vedic community members that will be there, Bear, and you'll be there in spirit with your true essence, of course. And yes, Tom has mentioned taking me out surfing. A little nervous about that. I know the waves are pretty meaty there as a longboarder here. I don't know how I'll fare, but I'm looking forward to that. And actually, I realized, Bear, even here down in Klamath Beach, we have one of the largest great white nesting areas in the
Oh yeah.
States and maybe in the world as well. So it can be quite sharky here as well.
Oh yeah, Northern California, where I grew up, and learned how to surf was Stinson Beach, just north of San Francisco. And we surfed at the Bolinas Lagoon that separated Bolinas and Stinson Beach. And that was the biggest nookery for seals. And right around the corner where my cousin's ranches were, Tamales Bay, was a major breeding ground in the Western Hemisphere for white sharks. So when we went out on the rocks to throw our boards in the water and dive in, if the seals didn't jump in the water first and they're more scared of the water than us, we said, not a good day to go surfing today.
And I'm sure, as we will talk about a bit today with companionship with the fauna of the world, I could see Anastasia probably grabbing onto a great white fin and going for a ride. And really,
For
right?
sure. She could do it.
And she would, and maybe that's the point here, right? Is they're here to send us a message as well. But yeah, I'm excited to go deep into back into the Ringing Cedars books today, and I know Gabe has some updates for us. Let's jump into it. And I titled this "Anastasia's Plan to End the Technocracy," which is really
Great title.
one of the great things that comes out of these books, right? Because it is a plan that she sets forward. The reclamation of mankind's sovereignty on the land has become increasingly relevant, and many are now feeling a sense of urgency to decouple from the synthetic grid. Vladimir Megre's adventures in the Siberian Taiga with Anastasia are now legendary, as the Ringing Cedars series has struck a heartfelt chord in the growing numbers worldwide yearning to return to an authentic lifestyle. We are more than excited for this week's Alfacast, as Gabriel Miguel, the founder and executive director of the Anastasia Foundation, returns to delve deeper into the spiritual roots of the Ringing Cedars movement, originally shared by Anastasia with Vladimir Megre. Inspired by the Ringing Cedars of Russia book series, the Anastasia Foundation is at the forefront of the Ringing Cedars movement in the English-speaking world, with a focus on connecting, inspiring, and empowering Ringing Cedars readers everywhere. The foundation has become the largest international community of Ringing Cedars readers outside of Russia. The foundation will also be the the exclusive publisher of the Ringing Cedars of Russia series in English internationally. Vladimir, author of the Ringing Cedars of Russia books, wrote to Gabriel, quote, "Gabriel, I intuitively feel that you could create a large and powerful community in the English-speaking countries. It could present the world with a new paradigm for overcoming the crisis. The correctness of my assumptions has been proven in practice. In all countries where I have ever spoken to readers, they express their desire to create and be friends. I am grateful to you that you feel the situation well and are able to do a great deal for all the people in the world." So that is a phenomenal letter to receive from him. Through its community-driven approach and extensive network, the Anastasia Foundation is helping to create the new civilization on Earth. At Alfa Vedic, we are quite proud to be partners with this foundation and to work in tandem with this overall vision. Dr. Bear, take it away, my friend.
Yes, Gabe, awesome to have you back. And I've been wanting to connect with you for so long. You know, we had a little chain of email tag and everything going on for a long
Yeah,
time, but we're
it
both
happens.
so busy. Yeah. But you know, the Anastasia or Ringing Cedars movement is, you know, closest to my heart. And if there's any one movement
Mm,
I would like to be more involved in, it's that. And, you know, when I was kind of reaching
mm,
out and saying, hey, you know, what can I do? You know, it's really
yeah,
genuine. And I'd still like to, you know, because we're doing a very similar thing here. We've
right.
done the same thing. I read the Ringing Cedars a long time ago when they first came
Hmm.
out. And, you know, ever since then, it just really touched me. So wonderful to have you here. Uh, so
Thank
many
you.
things I want to catch up on. Now, when you start talking, the camera will be on you. So not only
Okay.
would we like you to catch us up on, you know, what's going on in the movement, but also do a
Yeah.
screen share and show us some things. And then also hold the books up again. You know, here's
Hmm.
one of the volumes here.
Oh, hold up.
And
We've got the same one
yeah,
here. Let me hold it up. There we
yeah,
go.
if you talk at the same time, the camera will be on you there.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I
Yep.
snapped it. I got it on
So
my end. So that is the original artwork, right?
yeah, this is the well, first of all, thank you guys for having me on. I really have a lot of respect for both of you and what you do with this show. And you guys are really close to my heart and the work that you're doing as well. So it's really good to be connected with you and to be here. And I'm always glad to share Anastasia's message with the world. And so yeah, this is the first edition of the books. They were published with these artistic, beautiful covers, and then the second edition with these black nature inspired covers. So, yeah, first edition of the books.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, there's so much to catch up on, and so we'll just kind of let you lead in again with an update
Sure.
and some screen shares, and then I'd really like to go a deeper, where we left off in our last time with you. What, maybe a year or two ago? I don't know whenever it was.
Something like that.
And there's Mike and I were talking about volume 6 of the Ringing Cedars, where they get into some of the occult underpinnings of what was going
Hmm.
on and how certain forces have actually been trying to work against the Anastasia Foundation, which of course is
Hmm.
about what I look at as reclaiming our Earth 2 acres at a time. And it seems like there's
Amen.
real forces out there that don't want to give it up. So, maybe we can get into some of that. But welcome again. Honored
Absolutely.
to have you here and make time for us. So take it away, Gabe.
Yeah. Again, so grateful to be here. And so, what I wanted to do is for those of you who don't know what this is about, what are we talking about? What is the Ringing Cedars of Russia? What are these books? Who is Anastasia? I wanted to do a little bit of a just summary recap kind of thing so you guys can learn more about that. So, I'm going to stop my camera here and I'm going to share my screen. Got just a couple slides to take you guys through to introduce the ideas. So can you guys see that?
Yes,
There might be a little bit of a delay.
Yes.
we do see it. And you have created a beautiful website, by the way, my friend.
Oh, thank you, brother. Thank you. Yeah, I'm gonna be doing a new one soon. I'm just a professional web designer. Got to make it happen. Um, so yeah, this is a little bit of an introduction to the Ringing Cedars. And so, what are these books, right? What is the Ringing Cedars of Russia book series about? The second edition covers here are the ones that people probably recognize the most, but you saw that I was holding up the different books here. So, who is Anastasia, right? What are these books? So, the books were written by, at the time, a Russian entrepreneur named Vladimir Megre, or Megre, if you want to use the proper pronunciation. So, they were published in the 90s and early 2000s in Russia. They sold 30 million copies so far internationally in, I think I got the wrong number here, but it's more than 20 languages. I didn't get exactly the number. I think it's 22 or 23 languages, at least 700,000 new copies in English, but that statistic is quite old. I'm estimating more than a million or up to like maybe 1.5 million, something like that, new copies in English. So that's pretty good. And then you factor in the used book market and years of these books being in circulation, then you see there's a pretty large readership in English. So there's that. And how the books came to be is that in 1994, Vladimir, like I said, he was an entrepreneur. He was bringing goods and trading things up and down in the far north of Siberia on a river called the River Ob in the Siberian Taiga, which is like uh, far north Siberian forests where Anastasia lives. So he stops along the river during one of these trading trips, and a Siberian elder approaches Vladimir and tells him about these trees called the ringing cedar trees. Uh, so, Vladimir becomes very interested. He decides to come back and investigate these trees. The elder tells him that the trees can cure any disease and make you successful and talented and happier if you just wear a piece of it around your neck. And he says that the ringing cedar, where the name of this book series comes from, the Siberian cedar lives to be up to 550 years old, during that time, it accumulates all this energy from the stars, the sun, the moon, the cosmos, and holds it in itself. And its purpose is to give it back to humanity when humanity is running short of this bright energy. So he asked Vladimir, can you come and cut up this tree and distribute it to people? Because it's got this energy to give back. And if it doesn't do it at this certain point, the tree will die and its purpose won't be fulfilled. So Vladimir is very curious about this, decides to come back on another trip. So the second trip, he comes back and he doesn't see the elders, but he sees Anastasia, this young woman here who you see on the right. And she takes him deep into the forest to see the ringing cedar with his own eyes and to, well, share millions and millions of other things with him. And he spends 3 days with her. And essentially, who is Anastasia, right? So her family line has been living separately from the rest of humanity in harmony with God, preserving all the knowledge of our what she calls pristine origins, the wisdom and purity of our very beginning from when God created us for thousands of years, millennia. And so she talks to Vladimir about all of these incredible things about our true relationship with nature, how to know God, how to have love in our families forever, how to turn this earth into a beautiful, flourishing garden, and so many other things. And so I will read Vladimir's words about who, he said she is. And he writes this in the 10th book, which was published in 2010. So he goes and sees her many, many times. There's he after the first time he meets her, he goes back and she asks him to write a book. I kind of have this out of order here, but she asks him to write a book and about his experiences with her and everything that she shared. And she says, in the book you're going to write, there will be unobtrusive combinations, formulations made up of letters, and they will arouse in the majority of people good and radiant feelings, capable of overcoming ailments of body and soul, and will facilitate the birth of a new awareness inherent in the people of the future. Believe me, Vladimir, this is not mysticism. It is in accord with the laws of the universe. And so, with this incredible, these combinations of words that Anastasia put into the books, they touch people's souls so strongly that the books and the ideas in them spread like wildfire. And those 30 million copies that I mentioned earlier were sold without any advertising at all, no paid advertising, word of mouth, and published into all these different languages, sparking a giant worldwide movement of which we are helping to organize the English speaking aspect of. So back to who is Anastasia? This
Gabe,
is
I did want to say one
yeah,
thing, and I appreciate the presentation,
go
but
ahead.
we want to remember we did do a first episode where we went over a lot of this. So for
Okay.
those who do want to go back and see that, that was what, 2 years ago. So it's a good
Yeah.
review. But yeah, I definitely want to make sure we're moving forward into the newer
Sure,
stuff.
sure.
But this is a good review for those who have never
Sure.
heard of this before, who are just coming to this now. But I did want to mention we did an awesome interview with you. God, that was like 2 years ago on a previous Alfacast. I'll find the number for
It was
everybody.
a long time.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Keep going though. I'm
So
enjoying this.
yeah,
Yeah.
essentially the last thing I wanted to say here, I was just about to finish up. I'm not going to go any deeper here. And thank you for helping me with the timing. Um, Vladimir says she's the descendant of people who've been living here for thousands of years and represent what is literally a whole different civilization. She and those like her have survived to the present day through what I can only term the wisest possible decisions. She has an extraordinary ability. When she's telling a story about something, pictures of the events she's narrating arise in the listener's consciousness or in actual space. There's a little depiction of that here, like holograms. And she preserves the experiences and genetic and emotions of the members of her extended family, starting with the creation of the very first human in her genetic memory, and she's able to call them up at will. So she remembers everything perfectly all the way back to before the earth was created and when the earth was created and the first people who lived here and everything. And she shares all this with Vladimir. And so that's a bit about who she is. That's a little bit of an introduction to this. So I hope that was useful for anybody who might not know. And yeah, there's so much that can be said after that. In the books, she talks about um, kins domains, which I'm sure we should probably get into. But again, if you guys want to go back and listen to that first interview, Mike, where would you like me to go from here? Because there's so many directions that I could go in. I think letting people know about Kins domains would be good,
Well,
as that's
I,
such a
I
central
think
Yeah.
idea. But wherever you'd like to
I
go.
think it would be great to touch more on the history of the Vedic people and set that foundation because I don't know if we went quite as deep in the first episode. We actually touched a lot on the Kins
Sure.
domains on that first episode, and
Okay.
that could maybe lay the
Perfect.
basis for the strategy around what this technocracy is, who's behind it, and what Anastasia's laid out as what true man, womb man can do to
Sure.
to not it's not fighting it, it's just leaving it, right? It's going back to,
Yeah.
like she says, our
Hmm.
pristine origins.
I
Hmm.
think the review is great, and thanks for doing that. Yeah, I think I mentioned, last time we were talking that I have an affinity for Russia, always have my entire life for some reason, just always been fascinated. And there's a lot going on there, and I think we can even bring it up to present time and understand
Yeah.
why there's been an all-out assault on Russia forever.
Hmm.
Of course,
Hmm.
the the whole reign of terror that began in 1917, and now the same forces that were behind the Bolshevik revolution are once again
Right.
demonizing Russia. And it seems like,
Right.
aside from the kinship domain, there's also, national tendencies that are arising again in Russia, and
Hmm.
wanting to be independent in food, not allowing chemtrails. I know an individual that's over there right now, and he's saying, yeah, not one chemtrail, they won't allow them over there. No
Hmm.
GMOs. So I think Mother Russia is trying to arise again. And also, Russia's always been our ally. And then at the same time, we've got these new forces trying to control America. So maybe if we can just blend all
Right.
that together and,
Yeah.
go from there.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
think to your point, Bear, a couple of photos of some real settlements and domains, I think would be really good for people to see to understand
Awesome.
what's going on in Russia right now and where all this is coming from and what's going on. So there's a lot that I can say. So let me just go back and share real quick. This will only be just a few photos to give people the right idea of what's going on. Let me
And I
go
guess a
here
refresher,
and
of course, on what the Kins domain
sure.
is good, right? The fact that she laid out how the ancient Vedic people, the Vedras people that preceded this current paradigm, that kind of erupted. She says out of Egypt, but maybe that's Atlant. I don't know where Atlantis falls in this, if that's in the mythos of Anastasia.
Right,
Um, but
right.
um, but how we live in the time of the occult, and I love to get into all that. But basically,
Yep.
it was a family-driven, decentralized society where everybody that was in the nuclear had a nuclear family had their own, what's called a kins domain. That had a certain
Hmm.
hectare, right, of area that was essentially their garden of love or their space of love that was directly connected to God and nature and the universe. And it was how, through this
Correct.
model of decentralization, which is really brilliant, through pure tapped into God through nature and through true source, as a direct
Right.
conduit, right? Man and womb man were able to live in harmony and peace and essentially live at, and I love the pristine origins, which I believe is that your handle on Instagram? I always try
Yeah,
to find
that's
you.
my personal handle on Instagram. Yes, Pristine Origins. Uh, but yeah, you're completely right about everything. And just the quickest introduction on this that I could possibly do. 1 hectare for everybody, right? 1 hectare, 2.5 acres for everybody. This is a little bit of a mock-up. You have a living fence surrounding the hectare. 50 to 75% of it is for a variety of different trees, orchard, nut trees, wood trees, whatever. Bushes, you have your pond, you build a house, beehives, living structures, made out of trees like gazebos, summer sleeping areas, and all these things, living structures, and emphasis is placed on that. A summer living room. And the point is to give birth to children here, pass down this space to them in perpetuity. And there's 10,000 things I could say. about this, but one person has a hectare, and then many people come together and create their own space of love, their own domain, and you wind up getting what's called a settlement. And so if I just go out here real quick, this is a photo of, we just did an event with, okay, so the books were, they were published in the late 90s. So people started creating these domains and settlements in Russia a lot after the books were published. And the oldest settlements at this point are more than 20 years old. What you're looking at here is a 22, 23-year-old settlement, something like that. We just did an event with them and spoke to one of their leaders and founding members. But this one is called Kovcheg. You can see that means arc, and you can see each of these little squares here is an individual domain. So this is a very different model than what people understand as like eco villages and things. Every family has their own individual hectare, their own space. Many people come together and do this together. I have lots of other photos that I could probably share, but you can see a couple of them here. But some of the largest settlements in Russia are more than 300 families. This one, I think, is a couple hundred, and there's more than 400 settlements in Russia alone. And then in the other countries, former Soviet Union countries, Belarus, Ukraine, there's a whole bunch as well. Many in Europe, and emerging settlements and things like this in the United States and other Western countries. So I'll stop there. But so this coming out of Russia, right? Anastasia tells everybody to take back your motherland, right? She says the world, the earth is extensive and there's so much land, but we don't have a piece of it to call our own, right? And so she urges people, take back your motherland, take a piece of land for yourself. Say, I'm going to gather my family line here, turn this little hectare of land into a paradise, and create a space of love, right? For your family. Give this land to your children in perpetuity, and turn the whole earth eventually into a giant flourishing garden full of happy families in this way. And so this movement coming so strongly out of Russia, um, there's a lot going on there. They've passed laws, and they have what are called oblasts in Russia. They're like states here. And there have been several oblasts that have passed laws on kins domains where anyone can go to the government there and get, as you know, like we have friends that got 150 hectares granted to a group of them. I think it was like 20 or 30 of them came together. They asked their local government in an oblast called Belgorod, and they got 150 hectares plus a bunch of grants to start building their domains, no strings attached. Now they have a giant flourishing settlement there, and it was all government supported. There was another act called the Far East Hectare Act, where they started giving out land in the Russian Far East. The first day that they launched that program in 2017, they received like 40,000 applications, and the website crashed.
Wow.
And yeah, and that's been operating now, I think, since 2017, and they've given out tons of land. And there's other regions of Russia that are giving out land. We have friends there who tell us that a lot of their local governments are favorable and supportive of the idea, and they're voting on a national law on kins domains in the Duma, which is like the Senate of Russia. And that law has been revised several times, but it's currently there at the national level. And so, well, I definitely see an incredibly bright future ahead for Russia, and they're paving the way. They've created so many of these settlements, so many thousands and thousands of happy families living on the earth, and it's a true example of this lifestyle.
Well, that's so encouraging, that there's a place in the world like that. Meanwhile, here in Southern Oregon, they're arresting people for water catchment and starving out, cutting off the water to
Yeah,
farms in not only Eastern Oregon, Southern Oregon, and Idaho, but just, really trying to put a kibosh on any kind of self-sufficiency. Now, you've also delved quite a bit into maybe some legal processes, for lack of a better way to
definitely.
describe them. that can help us here at home to reclaim title of our land. I don't know if right now is an appropriate time to talk about that, but
We
we're
can
of
talk
course
about that.
alluding to land patents. And what
Hmm.
place do you think that has in maybe us turning the tables a
Yeah.
bit?
So that is such a good question. And to the credit of this wonderful show and the work that you, Bear, and Mike do, I learned about land patents and mainly Ron Gibson through you guys. I had heard about land patents before and I had already done some reading and education, but I didn't know about Ron. So him and I connected, and Robert William from American Meeting Group, anybody listening, became tremendously good friends and they love the idea of Kins domains a lot. And Rob and I talk all the time. I'm helping them build a new website, and we're always talking. I'm talking to him tomorrow, and I've learned so much about land patents and how to get true title to your land and own your land in perpetuity. So the first thing that Anastasia says in the fourth book, where she's telling people about Kins domains, she says, first you have to find a place on the earth find a piece of land on the earth that's the most pleasing to you of all the spaces on the earth and make sure that the climate is also pleasing to you there. So that way it'll also be pleasing to your descendants and your grandchildren. Then she says, take a piece of land for yourself in that place in perpetuity. And so Vladimir is there with her and she's telling this to him. And he's like, you can't just go and take a piece of land anywhere you want in perpetuity. And she's like, well, if you don't have a law that allows you to do that, use what you have at the moment, take advantage of the most favorable of existing laws. But eventually you need to pass a law where you can own land forever. And so they're talking about Russian law. But here we have land patents, right? And so for those who don't know, if you have the land patent is the most favorable of all the existing laws, which allows you to own your land in perpetuity. On the document, it says that uh, essentially it's a grant from the president. It's signed by the authority of the president, giving land to a named person forever, right? So you own the land forever. They have no interest to it. They relinquish all their claims to it. And I've definitely found that this is a really important thing for the movement going forward because some people wonder, let's say I'm building my Kins domain. I have my 2.5 acres of land. I'm building this community. All these families are moving here. There's a lingering anxiety in the back of our mind about, can this land be taken from me? Can the government come and encroach upon this beautiful paradise that I have created? And certainly we can't be naive and act like attempts won't be made because they certainly will. And so how do we defend ourselves? And so, yeah, the land patent is a super incredible tool for that. It's the best tool that we have here. And does that answer your question?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I just wanted to open the discussion to that. And of course, the land
Oh
patent
yeah.
process, for people that haven't gone down that road, it also enlightens us to the fact that we have all been duped into these fraudulent contracts. And just like signing a 1040 form, which all of a sudden now, we get our property confiscated for not paying taxes. It's actually for breach of
Yeah.
contract, not for failure to pay or willful failure to file. And the same thing with a land
Mhm.
patent, we find out that we have this thing called a warranty deed, which is just how the camel got its nose under the tent into our business and never belonged there in the first place. So you find that, geez,
Right.
this is a foreign corporation that's usurped itself into our country and has no business here, let alone in my personal affairs. And it's a wonderful thing. We don't have to go to war with anybody, but if a code enforcer or somebody tries to come onto the land, somebody, we know this is a small area here, so we all know each other and they don't dare come onto here. Plus, they consider us neighbors. But in other places where the code enforcement is just very administrative, they will not come on your land if you know how to enforce it. And so it's a
Mhm.
wonderful thing. And more than anything, it fosters a mindset of we aren't meant to be in our knees to anybody, let alone bow to any earthly authority. So it's really a spiritual process, is the way I'd look at it.
I agree. Yeah,
And
they're probably some of the most spiritually aligned laws that were ever passed are the entire land patent. I think that is an incredibly useful, earthly law. And again, like what I found is that that this land is mine forever. I have a way of enforcing that this land is mine forever. It's going to be my descendants' land forever. And then also I can subdivide this land and do whatever I want with it. So if I have 400 hectares for a settlement and I've got all these families living here, we can bring people in and then grant them land forever. You can make smaller grants from a larger land patent and give people forever rights to their land. So you have something way stronger than a warranty deed, where at the bottom you're just listed as a tenant, which is pretty awful to find out. But yeah, it's an
Well, it also,
incredible thing.
last thing I'll say is it really breeds a mentality of being a responsible steward. Who takes
Yeah.
care of their land better? Somebody who's a renter or somebody who is building something for their family and future generations?
Yeah,
Yep.
that's yeah, that's a great point. That's the whole point of the kins domains, is that this is for future, this is literally the lifeblood of your family line is in the land. And I think that's
Right.
where a lot of the land patent concept comes from, is being stewards. And I would say this is a great tie-in into the back to the history of the Vedic people and how we now
Yeah.
live in this, as Anastasia explains, this time of occultism. And people often ask when they hear about land patent, why do I not know about this? Why do I have this thing called a warranty deed? Why am
Hmm.
I considered a debtor out of the gates? I never knew that I consented to these contracts, etc. Well, everything has been occulted and hidden on purpose for thousands of years, and she breaks this down in an amazing way. But it does come down to consent, and the warranty deed, you consented to that through your lack of knowledge to be that renter. And so that's the genius behind the the idea of occulting things through religion, through the state, right? Through centralized forces. That's all just different means of occulting. And so,
Mm.
yeah, it would be kind of fun maybe to break this down. We were speaking
Yeah.
earlier a couple days ago about how interesting she's talking about the Vedic culture, right? That was the culture
Hmm.
before that lived in these Kens
Hmm.
domains. And what is the name of our company? Alfa Vedic, right?
Vedic.
So
Beautiful.
it's a tie-in that's awesome. And I think
Yeah.
subconsciously we were moving down this path without even talking about the Ringing Cedars books. Obviously, Bear was reading them when they came out, and I just didn't start reading them a few years ago. But that is a driving ethos behind what we do, is this Vedic culture. Gabe, would you mind giving us a little quick
Yeah.
breakdown of what they're all about?
Absolutely. So the idea of the Kins domain that Anastasia shares is not a new idea. It's new in this age because we weren't aware of it, how specifically she lays it out. But the idea comes from a time way back in our history, and actually up to pretty recently. So you're talking about the what she calls the Ved Rus culture, Vedic Rus, right? And what she said is Vladimir was asking about what is your culture? What is your background? I said in the beginning that she is the descendant of a different kind of culture that's lived separately from mankind and all this. And she was one of the last remaining people. And so she said, our people have not died out. They're dormant. Our people happily thrived on the territories now known as Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, England, Germany, France, India, China, and many other states, both large and small. Up until quite recently, only 5,000 years ago, in the real world, our people were thriving on lands from the Mediterranean and the Black Sea to the farthest northern latitudes. We are Asians, Europeans, and Russians, as well as those who recently called themselves Americans. In fact, God people from a single Ved-Rus civilization. And then she says there is an era of life on our planet known as the Vedic Age. And this is all coming from book six, Mike, as you were talking about. And essentially, she's saying that how the cycles of our history have gone is that mankind, we lived in what she called the Vedic Age, and we spent 99,000 years cyclically repeating things in the Vedic Age. Um, and then reaching what she calls the age of the image, where we learn how to control collective thought and to create these powerful energy images, and use them collectively together to make magnificent things happen. But then there's a mistake committed during that period of time where we're not able to progress further as a human civilization. And then we go into what's called the occult age, which lasts 1,000 years, which we are just emerging out of at this point. But so making it sound like it's this cyclical, never ending, repeating thing, we are currently never going back into this occult age. In the first book, she talks about how we have passed through what she calls the dark forces window of time, where a planetary disaster was supposed to happen. Everything was supposed to get reset, and eventually we would start again from, being in this pure garden and figuring out how to live in harmony with God. But these are the cycles of history that she talks about. So she said that even up until 2000 years ago, that in what is now called Russia, that was the last like vestige of the Vede Rus culture. That was the last place, the last island that held out against the invasion of this occult ideology, right? The what was put in place by who she calls the priest, these six men whose thought kind of deviated from the original direction of God, and they desired to take control of everyone for their own reasons. And yeah, so Russia being the last
And
place
there's
to hold out.
and also
Mhm.
there's the master priest, right? There's the top of
The
the
high
pyramid, the
priest.
high priest. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so there's a lot
Also,
of like talk about who controls the world and all these things. And so Anastasia talks about how it was this group of six priests, and they created what was known as the state of Egypt, right? And they didn't directly create it. They were involved in its creation. And yeah, since then, they have been, running things, but they're all done. For anybody who hears about that,
yeah.
they're all done and they're out of the way. But nothing to fear. Everything is good. But yeah, there's a lot there.
Well,
So,
also with the understanding that the earth is a sentient being and that also going through an evolutionary process, which also coincides with a larger cosmic cycle and creating a resonance here in this realm that is not going to allow the black magician's magic to work anymore. And so
yeah.
we see that now where everything they're doing is failing. So
Hmm.
yeah, we just have to get through a few more bumps and then also understand what Anastasia is telling us is that with our own focus and becoming more strong in our thought patterns, and that cannot be overcome. And of course, two
Hmm.
acres at a time of people actually grounding it in on the land in this way, there's no way it can be overcome with the propaganda and anything the magicians can throw at us anymore.
And I'll just add
Right.
one thing. They require centralization. They require that pyramid structure, which is not conducive to the original Vedic, obviously, civilization. And so with decentralization, that is an obvious answer here, right? And it's a brilliant model of decentralization going
Hmm.
back to, and
Right.
of course, look what the woke culture, technocratic systems have been trying to do to the nuclear family, right? They've been trying to eradicate it through feminism, through wokeology, through the transgender movement, through LGBTQ 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 9, 10, whatever you call it. You know, the whole misgendering stuff. That's all attack on this model that the Kin's domain's based on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
So,
Right.
Gabe,
Wow.
quick
There's
question
so
for
much
you.
there. Yeah, please.
I was going to ask you, we're talking about the history of Russia and this wonderful period, before
Hmm.
the occult period. Does that coincide with what people talk about with the Tartarian civilizations? And then also when you talk about with the The state of Egypt, of course, all they did was usurp the
Hmm.
technologies that were left before by more advanced civilizations.
Yeah.
So, not to mistake that they were the originators of that technology that they used in the first place.
Yeah.
So, any
So the
thoughts on that?
origin of Egypt is described in Book 4 in some absolutely fantastic chapters. Book 4,
Mhm.
Co-creation. And Anastasia tells the story of one of her forefathers who was one of these great men living away and separate from society. Um, and she was saying at that time the earth was filled with different tribes of people. So before all this, the world was covered in kins domains and settlements and full of happy families, and the earth was a paradise garden, all the way, as she says, from England to China, everything in between, one beautiful, unified peoples, right? And if you go back far enough in history, you're going to see all these connections between people,
And I
this
was just going to say that we've had
planetary.
so many shows, Gabe, where we've tied into that idea of a monoculture, of a
Absolutely.
unilateral culture that everything comes from. Some would call it the
Yep.
Proto-Indo languages that connect to that. And we've had, Steve Falconer on relating to the Celtic
Hmm.
culture and people relating to, like as Bear was saying, Tartaria. So there is
Hmm.
definite all of that leading and pointing to what Anastasia is saying here. There's so many tie-ins with other traditions and other thinkers and
Hmm.
different alternative history ideas. It just makes so much sense.
Hmm. Right. And so what I was gonna say is you can see that this is all there. So Bear was asking about Tartaria, and Bear, what was the other thing? Um, you asked me about
Well,
Tartaria and
I brought in Egypt and the fact that
Egypt,
Anastasia
right? I
said
was about to
that
explain that.
the priests created a state of Egypt, but
Yes.
through some of
So
my other studies, it's that those technologies, pyramids, and so forth, were there a long,
yeah,
long time ago, and it seems like these
I'll clarify
occultists
that
really don't create; they just um, take over things
entreat.
and use them. Yeah,
Yeah.
go
And
ahead.
so she describes the creation of Egypt. She was saying, we started off as this worldwide, beautiful Vedic, Vedrus culture covered in paradise kins domains full of happy families. Eventually, people started losing their connection with the universal mind and began going down a degenerative spiral. So at the time when her forefather was alive, roughly, I don't know, something like 10,000 years ago, maybe more recent. The earth was covered in tribes who were kind of warring, and there was already problems. And so he wanted to bring them all together. And he discovered this incredible power of creating invisible energy images, right? Living thought forms that are invisible in space that can interact with people and give them information. And he figured out how to create them through singing and creating wonderfully beautiful songs. And his goal, he wanted to unify all the tribes of the world and stop the fighting. So he went out to the people and he assembled a bunch of very talented singers and also people who would be considered wise men and leaders and priests. He said, I'm going to give you a weapon that's more powerful than anything you can possibly imagine, and that got their attention. Um, and he teaches them about this power of creating images. And he says, pick the most wise and kind and non-violent ruler among all the people that you know. And they said, well, there's this guy named Egypt, right? And he doesn't fight with anyone, and he's always running from the other people who are fighting, and they have lots of poets and they don't glorify their warriors. And so they said, okay, we'll take this man and he will be the leader. And so her forefather creates these three songs talking about a future state of Egypt, right? Of this magnificent place living in harmony, a wonderful ruler, a benevolent man named Egypt, and just a prosperous place. So they teach the songs to all the bards. The bards go among all the people in the different lands. They sing the songs, and Anastasia says all of the conflict just stopped, but there was no fighting. All of the disagreements and everything stopped, and everybody came together, and they did go and create this place called Egypt. And what happened was that her forefather met with these priests and was teaching them this power. creating these images that make people do things that touch their souls and compel them. But they wanted that power for themselves, for control, to, and they thought he knew too much, right? He was too great, and they didn't create images that compelled people as much as he did. And so they killed him, and he still tried to share with them this knowledge, in order to help humanity. But that's the story of where it all came from. That was the story of Egypt.
Fascinating.
And she talks about how the pharaohs were actually biorobots, which we see
Yeah,
today with
they
the Biden
created these
robot.
images of like and she says that the system of government hasn't really changed at all, and it's just deteriorated since then. And she said really these priests behind the scenes would create an image of an ideal ruler, and they would train the pharaoh on how to embody this image and to perform his functions, as a wise and kind ruler. But they would teach him part of this science and have him act in a certain way. And yeah, that's exactly it. And so um, that's where we're at. And so Tartaria, I believe what people call Tartaria is essentially you're talking about the same thing. And my study of that particular subject and how people term it that way is not extensive, but from what I know, we're just talking about remnants of the Vedic Rus culture as it goes down in time
Yep.
to our present day, right? From
Yep.
perfection, kin's domains, and what Anastasia talks about is biological technology, right? The technology of our consciousness, of the trees, the flowers, the sun, and the moon. She talks about how these things are infinitely more perfected than the man-made creations, right? And so we had perfect knowledge of these things in the beginning. Um, and like an example of this in the present day is I showed you guys that settlement in the beginning, this settlement Kovcheg, the large overhead view of this big settlement. And people there have been creating their domains for like 23 years. And what they say is that they've found that this space and these living things there, they found that it's a device for materializing human dreams. They found that there's so much power concentrated there that people are consciously figuring out how to interact and use it to bring their wildest dreams to fruition, right? So there are things that our ancestors knew that we have gone very far away from. But yeah, so Tartaria, I believe, is just humanity's a stop on humanity's path from perfect Vedic knowledge to where we
it,
currently
it it was
are.
it was kind of a bridge between that spiritual science that she discusses, that's pure imagery from thought creation, thought forms out of the ethers, right, out of our higher true
Yeah,
self, and then the more
right.
materialistic technology that we've now totally gone into. It was kind of the middle
Correct.
path. And in book 6 she talks about how the Rus civilization were the last basically to really be conquered by the priest class that came in, and they worked
Exactly.
for thousands of years to conquer Tartaria through creating principalities and finding people's weakness through pride.
Yep.
And that's really where it comes down to, right? Is this like concept of how you lose touch with God through pride of man. Like that's the whole fall of man, the Garden of Eden story. All of that relates to this. It's all the same story. Um,
Hmm.
and it's really fascinating to think about how that's all ending now. It's all ending.
Hmm.
And we are now at the time of the great change back to the garden, going back to this beautiful garden world, this garden realm, and how it's supposed to interact and what it's supposed to do. So, really fun times,
Correct.
y'all.
We're
Well,
right in the
we
middle of
also,
it. And I mean, we're seeing it happen excuse me, Bear, but we're seeing it happen all over the world. Like when I talk about kins domains to people in settlements, I'm like, guys, this is far removed from the realm of theory, and it has been for a long time. This has been happening for a couple decades already. Just because it hasn't blown up in the United States yet doesn't mean it's not impacting the world tremendously already. Like this bright future civilization is alive right now, and it just keeps gaining steam. So just one thing to say.
yeah, I was just going to add that we have a return of the qualitative sciences now, which not only identify the exact waveform configurations of how, mathematically precise of how nature recreates itself, but then with measurement devices and also the ability to reproduce that exact energy into even inanimate objects so that you're literally bringing life force into anywhere you want. So if you are
Yeah.
in a community that is, with the intentions of the kinship domain and also, planting, working with nature, that is going to create an abundance of that same energy, which of course is going to make our thought forms of the people that are in alignment with natural design come forth that much more readily. And as co-creators, doesn't it make sense that once we harness into that creative waveform technology, that things are just going to manifest in the direction that we want? It's pretty logical. And fortunately, a lot of things like biogeometry and other disciplines are bringing that forth, training people how to do that. And then folks that ground it in little plots of land and so forth. So yeah, it's more than
Right.
encouraging. It's no doubt it's happening.
Yeah,
Yeah.
can you do me a favor,
Oh,
Gabe?
go
Can you
ahead.
hold up now your internet's a lot better. I want to get that snapshot. Can you hold up
Yeah, let's do that.
the book again? Because your internet was really bad before and it could barely see it. I want people to be able to see it's better there. Yeah, look at that artwork. It's a very unique artwork that that came out of the Anastasia movement. And do you know where that came from? Who was it? Was that just
Yeah, this is a these are inspired by, the images that are set forth in the books. And this was done by a Russian artist, last name Razboinikov, I believe. A friend of mine actually bought these original paintings and he has them all. But yeah, these are just beautiful. These are different scenes and things from the books or inspired by the books. And Bear, there was so much you were saying about our interaction with the land just purifying us. And Anastasia talks about this directly. She says the four words that define the common task facing mankind are perfect the dwelling land. This is from the 10th book. And she says what this means, this is incredible stuff. She says perfecting the dwelling land means perfecting yourself, right? All that exists within the universe and on Earth represents through itself a united dwelling land, inseparably interconnected and with man at the center. In perfecting, oh, guys, you guys are going to love this. Perfect the dwelling land means give birth to and raise children who are more perfected than you yourself. Each generation should be more perfected than the previous. For this to come about, the generation that comes before should present the following generation with a more perfected dwelling land. That's the kin's domain. Create this place and give it to the next generation. In perfecting the dwelling land, man perfects his own thought. The perfected dwelling land quickens and refines man's thoughts. And in perfecting the dwelling land, man comes to know immortality. Man turns the earth into the most perfected planet of the universe. Earthly perfection permits and helps man to perfect other planets of the universe. And there's more there, but that's exactly what it is, right? We interact with the land with conscious awareness and love. It gives back to us, and we become more perfect. And there's an infinite cycle that goes up, right? It doesn't end in the there's no limitations to how far we can go with that.
Which of course is the same understanding that we are not single embodiments or personas in any one single embodiment. We are re-embodying and, in fact, paving the way for our future lifetimes at the same time.
Right. Well, to that point, Anastasia talks about immortality, right? God
Oh, good.
created man immortal. And to how to realize our immortality. She refers to death as nothing more than a dream. And what you can do is, and this has got to be like, honestly, guys, like one of the most soul pleasing and just, peace filling things of the Ringing Cedar series for me is the idea of reincarnating on your kin's domain. So she says,
Ah,
in order to have eternal life, you create a space that man as the soul is attracted to, right? A space that he loves and aspires to. And then she says at least one person on the earth has to think of you with love. And then she says at the moment of death, you can't admit the thought of death, but you have to visualize life anew on your domain, right? So when you're passing from your body, you think about your next life in this place, right? You have people who are living on the earth who love you, and you have this space that you want to come back to. And then it's filled with family members and descendants of yours. So you eventually reincarnate back into that family onto this space. And she even talks about how to remember and to pass away, but to retain all your information and knowledge so you don't lose yourself, right? And that's how it should be, because the experience of, she solved this whole thing of reincarnation. Like all the different religions talk about escaping the wheel of reincarnation because this world is full of suffering and all this, right? Learn how to go into samadhi so you don't have to reincarnate into a world of suffering. But the real question is, why is the world full of suffering? If we create a space, if we create a world that's full of happy families, flourishing paradise domains, children born in love, all these wonderful things, well, you don't have a world that needs to be avoided anymore. You don't have a world that's full of suffering and sorrow, and you have a place where you can come back to and reincarnate and would want to and enjoy your life in paradise as God intended. So there's so much there.
Well, she says Jesus is
yeah.
her brother, and he talks about creating heaven on earth, right? And originally, we
Mhm.
know he was proponent. He was obviously telling truth about reincarnation, and that was all occulted and changed by the Catholic Church,
Removed. She
removed.
said the high priest, yeah, he was pushing his luck during the Roman times, and he was the one who motioned to have the doctrine of reincarnation removed from the Bible.
Whatever council, yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
Constantinople, I think it
constant,
was.
yeah, um,
Yeah.
Yep.
yeah, and
Yeah, she
it's
said it was
just
the high priest.
dude, you're gonna trip. I'd mentioned this book to you before, and I know Bear's kind of started looking into it. But Thinking in Destiny with Percival, who is this guy who had this great awakening, everything he says is in total match with Anastasia.
Yeah.
Blows my mind, man. You see
Mm,
the truth with these great Illumin ones that saw that got to see the glimpse of the reality structure like she does as well, and there's so much in alignment, right? It's really cool to see. And yeah, this idea that we can't escape, I like it too, because she really counters this sort of Luciferian spiritual escapism we see in the New Age, right? And it's
yeah.
grounded back into
My
this
God.
earthly plane, and how important this earthly plane is, and how it's directly connected to this sovereign spiritual embodiment that we have. And if we try to go through an occulted religion to escape it, we'll just come back here, and that's the suffering that you're going to experience through the karmic repercussions of your thought forms that you create for yourself. So when you can get
Right.
past all
Or
that and live in harmony with how this system is supposed to work and take responsibility for your actions and your thoughts, then you start creating the heaven on earth.
And
or
she
even
said
just the
that one of the
concept that
biggest
we're
tools of the priest. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, please, you go.
No, she said one of the biggest tools of the priests that they have been able to gain control over people's thoughts through, just controlling how they think and these things. She said one of their biggest tools was getting people to think that heaven and paradise was on some other plane than the earthly plane, right? Getting them to think that paradise and beautiful life eternal is somewhere else. So that way they don't care about their life here, right? And it's a very destructive ideology. She even says it's the root of terrorism, right? It's the root. People don't even care about their life here, so they're willing to do whatever with it to gain an eternal life elsewhere. But really, like if we go back, if I am God, right? If I am this wonderful, uh, unbelievably loving, unfathomably kind, benevolent being, and I'm looking at everything I've done, why would I create my children, create this beautiful garden, this beautiful cosmos, put them here in this beautiful place, and then to condemn them to a material existence as if it's like some kind of condemnation to be here, as if we're in, people look at it as if like we're in jail on the earthly plane. It's like, how could our loving father, our loving creator, condemn us to this material plane? We were blessed to be here, right? And we can be active on all these different planes, and all of them have their beauty. And the earthly plane is a unique and wonderful one, and it can be made beautiful, and all the suffering can be eradicated from it. And that's our job, is to create this new civilization where these things don't exist anymore, you know?
Yeah, the concept that we're here to do our karma or original sin, all the book religions have some little trap in there that makes us believe that we're here just to atone, or that somehow good can
Yeah.
come from evil. You know, if we put things into motion that create imperfection, all we have to do is forget it and not repeat the same behavior. We don't have to, you know, chastise ourselves for eternity. And I something just caught my eye a second ago. You mentioned book 4. And so I just opened
Hmm.
it up, and the first thing that I glanced at was one of the chapter heads, Where do we go during sleep? I
Yeah.
wanted to immediately refresh my memory and read it, but anything you could tell us
Hmm.
about that?
So about the chapter, or about the idea of like, where do we go
Well, just
during our
the
sleep?
idea that, yeah, just, you know,
Yeah.
what Anastasia
Okay.
was going to explain where we actually go when we go to sleep.
Yeah, so she talks about, she calls it man's second self. So she says the primary being of man, and man, like our consciousness, our soul, is immaterial. And she says it's the sum total of all of our feelings, perceptions, our thoughts, and our consciousness, right? And so she says
Hmm.
that when we sleep, it separates from our material self, right? And you can, or consciously, you can separate it from your material self as well in meditation and these things. Um, and you can travel to different places in on the earth. You can travel through the stars. You can travel through time. There's even an exercise, a procedure that they give on how to do these things in the seventh book, on how to separate your second self and to go view different places around the world and all these things. So Anastasia is incredibly adept at this, and she's able to, move through time and space, and she can also move her body through space quite easily, although it's very hard for the average person. Her consciousness is so fast that she can do that. She can disassemble the atoms of her body and reassemble them somewhere else. And so, yeah, she even talks about back to biological technology, right? Because maybe this is a very important point. She says that our current systems of rockets, and you guys are all very well aware of this, right? This combustion explosion technology is nonsensical, incredibly inefficient. It's a horrible way to explore the universe. And we can't really explore the universe this way, but she says we can explore the universe through a psychotelepathic method where we can transport our bodies, or even she talks about in the 10th book, transporting using the Kins domain uh, as a sort of biological spaceship, for lack of a better term, to move it to other planets. Um, and these are things that she talks about, man being a cosmic being, right? Creating life on other planets once we've perfected this one. And even Vladimir, I got an interview with him in 2016, and he said, I think in 18 years, kids born on these settlements will begin exploring the cosmos in this new psychotelepathic way. So 18 years from 2016 is 2034, right? So we're not that far, I would say. And there's so much that we're discovering, right? We've been uh, the idea of our capabilities has been beaten out of us by this technocratic system, but Anastasia is waking us up, helping wake us up to who we really are and what we can do.
So, learning how to sleep consciously could be one of the more powerful tools at our disposal, you know, and a lot of us have talked about lucid dreaming and so forth. Back in about 1981, I was in a private audience with a gentleman by the name of Frederick Bell, and he was a great grandson of Alexander Graham Bell. So he had this pedigree, but he was also recognized as a prodigy in his own right. And he went to work with NASA when he was 14 years
Hmm.
old. And Mike, what's the acronym for, oh,
Never,
not a straight answer.
never,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's, yeah,
Never a straight answer.
never a straight answer. Yeah. Um, but he, in that chat we got to have, described technologies that he was involved with at that time, which were assembling, disassembling the atomic structure in different locations. So he likened it to things we see on Star Trek. He says, no, that's very real. We're doing it right now. Uh, and
Yeah.
also, without elaborating too much, I was exposed with more of a to a more shamanistic kind of character for an extended time, and he would do
Hmm.
exactly what you're talking about, and he would always go into these sort of trance states, right? We'd be sitting facing each
Hmm.
other, and then all of a sudden, boom, we'd both be somewhere else. And,
Well,
Yeah.
quite shocking at first. But there are a lot of folks running around more than we realize that know all of this and maintained these understandings through lineages like this one gentleman that, I met. So
yeah,
yeah, real
I
stuff.
don't know if there's a more occulted institution than NASA. Speaking of using the occult, right? Jack Parsons and all
Totally.
the stuff related to what the dark magic and everything. But yeah, Bear, that's really interesting. So I guess the question is, are they tapping into a technological way to do that, or are they just using the occulted knowledge of the ability to master consciousness, right? To transform the physicality there. Uh,
I think it would have to be both. You would have that
mm,
have appreciate the reality first, what gets into realms of consciousness, but then he alluded to they actually had technology that could mimic that function.
yeah.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting to think, what they're doing now. That was 1981,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And it seems like most of the efforts have just been put into CGI at this point, but
Anastasia
it's
said that like even the base, she gave the basic example of printing out an object on a printer. She's like, you can have information somewhere and then summon it up somewhere else and print it out. So she said essentially the same thing can be done with the domain. You can transport this information, this consciousness, this thing through space to another place at the speed of thought, right? And
yep.
like she says again and again that our current technology is just a primitive imitation. She says nothing exists, none of our technology is more perfect than what exists in nature. So our television is just a poor reproduction of our capacity to see images at a distance, right? Everything we do, our cell phones, our printers, our cars, uh, car ain't better than a horse, or a car's not better than teleporting your body across the planet if you knew how to do that. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's one thing she talks about a lot. And I don't know if you guys, we were talking about the ancient history, and Barry, you were talking about the pyramids. I could talk about where she says the pyramids come from and what their function was, and some of
Oh,
the
that'd be
ancient
awesome. Go
history
for it.
about that. So, I'm going to share my screen. I have some photos of what are called dolmens,
Oh, yeah.
and this will be really interesting for everybody here. But so talking about going from perfect, biological consciousness technology down to physical things. So she gives a history of these structures that are called dolmens, which you guys will see here once my screen starts to share. Um, but what she said is that when mankind was aware that they were losing their knowledge and they were beginning to get disconnected, some of the wise people of the civilization around 10,000 years ago would go into these structures called dolmens in order to enter like an eternal meditation, right? And separate their spirit from their body, Um, has my image shared here yet? Am I just talking and there's no Dolmen photo yet?
There we go.
There you go.
Okay,
Speaking of how whack modern technology is, if you had a thought ray, you could have sent that
exactly.
all into our beamed into our heads instantaneously.
That delay is
We wouldn't,
atrocious, isn't it? That's terrible.
and we wouldn't be censored by
Um,
YouTube.
no, uncensored communication. So this is a dolmen, and the people of the Vede Rus civilization would go into these, you could say to die, but to more accurately enter an eternal meditation. And the point was their spirit would dwell in this place and communicate with whoever came in the future to pass down the knowledge that they were trying to share. And also, they would merge themselves so fully with the cosmic ocean of consciousness that they would become much wiser and understand things themselves, and they would serve as an information conduit to future generations to preserve all types of vital knowledge. And so, what's very interesting is I have a friend in Russia who does tours to these dolmens, and I know there will probably be a bit of delay, but on photos you can see other things, but this is a dolmen, and they captured this image of what we assume to be the dolmen spirit in the corner. You can see this bright light um, on in the dolmen. And I also had an experience with these dolmens. I went to Russia in 2016 and got to be around a few of them, and they're unbelievable things. You can definitely feel the spirit of the people who are there, and you learn a lot, and you feel like you have an open channel to communicate with the universe. But what she said about the pyramids is that these structures precede the pyramids. The dolmens precede the pyramids significantly. And that, here's some more photos here. This is another one of
We're
like a
finally
dolmen
seeing
spirit. There's a
it.
lot of
That
them in Russia.
Yeah, it was taking a while to show up, so we're finally seeing it
Sorry,
now. It's okay. So
there's a
yeah,
bit of a
that's
delay.
crazy.
Yeah. And she says that these precede the pyramids substantially, and are much more powerful and relevant. And what she said about the pyramids is that once people's consciousness kept declining, and they couldn't create these dolmens anymore, they created the pyramids in order to kind of approximate the effect of a dolmen. So she said that the
Yes.
Great Pyramids, for example, people would they'd have to come together and hold their hands around the pyramid. Large group of people hold hands and direct their consciousness to a single ray at the top of the pyramid. And then she said an energy would form there similar to a type of radiation, and it would create a beam that would then open up a channel of communication with the universe. And this was to approximate the function of a dolmen. But the dolmens do this much more perfectly because they are living souls, which is a whole different thing. But yeah, that's just one part of the ancient history that she gets into.
Isn't that interesting that the pyramid represents literally the new sort of pyramid control dynamic, right? The centralized dynamic of the top down, where the dolmen is a circular sort of infinite, more natural, decentralized creation. Um,
There's tons of them all over Russia and Europe and stuff. Not
Mm.
really many here in North America, but in Russia you'll find places where there's like little dolmen complexes. There'll be like 20 or 30 of them in one spot. And I spent 10 days meditating at a group of three dolmens, and it was one of the best decisions I ever made, that's for sure.
and
Pyramid is go ahead, Mike.
I was just going to say it makes sense that obviously when you can control matter through your mind, through the power of the image technology of consciousness, then they can just shape that rock, that living rock, to however they want, right? I mean, that's sort of how
Oh
they,
yeah. She
yeah.
said they would levitate them. They would make them lighter to move them. Obviously, the stones are huge, right? And um, yeah, she said that's how they built the pyramids too. They would have people who knew how to do that assist with making the stones lighter to move them around and stuff.
Yeah, I was just going to say with the pyramids, they were definitely a technology And many people more in present time believe there's all beneficial energies if you sit under a pyramid or wear one on your head or
Yeah,
something.
the pyramid
But
power.
when you get
Definitely.
into the qualitative sciences, you measure those attributes coming from a pyramid, and you don't want to be underneath one of those. It's not good for your physiology. That we just kind of naively assume that, oh,
Interesting.
it's cool, so it must be good for us. So the pyramid structures can be used, but not something you want to live under or wear on top of you or something. So there's a lot of
That's fascinating.
misunderstanding. That's just all coming from the science of biogeometry, and so there's ways to use those energies, but you have to be careful and understand the qualitative nature and whether it's conducive to the type of energy, which is a golden mean energy, or what they call in biogeometry BG3, uh,
Mhm.
which is always beneficial, always regenerative, but not necessarily reproduced, directly under a pyramid.
Mhm. Interesting. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. hmm
Yeah,
And
that
I'd
makes a
be,
lot of sense.
yeah, and I'd love to be able to measure the energetics coming off of some of the structures that you're showing us.
People have, and they've measured all
I'm
different
sure they have.
types of radiations and really, really high readings of all different
Yeah.
types of things. I don't remember, the different measurements and units off the top of my head,
Yeah.
but I've seen that it has been done because the books brought light to these dolmens and their
hmm
function. So before, none of the people, they just thought they were weird prehistoric structures and nobody knew anything. But now people know. And so people across Russia and different countries will come to these dolmens and pay them their proper respects now. Unfortunately, many of them were destroyed through ignorance over time or taking their stones and using them to build other buildings and stuff, which is like, wow. But at least people respect them now, and I know you
hmm
guys wanted to talk about the history and stuff, and there's a lot more that wherever you guys want to go with this, I'd be happy to share.
Well, I think it'd be good to sort of transfer over now to application and apply this to the title, right? The plan to end the technocracy. We've touched on a
Yeah.
lot of different elements of what Anastasia brings to the table, but
hmm
how to implement this now in our lives. Obviously, the Kins domain being the prime mover in that, but there's a lot of philosophy here in this that we can implement in our lives right now, right, to counter the technocracy. And it's really
Right.
it's an internal thing. It's just an internally different way of conceiving reality and how you interact with it.
hmm and that's such a good point because we talked earlier about Bear, you were mentioning like grounding in these things into the world, right?
hmm
There's a
hmm
material manifestation, right? And that's what separates this from, you would say, different spiritual ideologies and things, because Anastasia talks about that, we will say that we're wise, we'll say that we're spiritual, we'll say that we're religious, but none of the outward features of our life change. And we haven't created anything material that is a demonstration of this wisdom or spirituality that we say that we have. We still live in these dirty cities. We still live in these places full of violence and crime, and we're still creating war, even though we say we're so spiritual and wise. And so it's a fascinating thing because she says, well, there's a lot of things she says about it, but I'll read a quote about this. And Vladimir is saying, let each one of us take a small plot of his land, 1 hectare, pull his whole mind and whole spirituality together, and create a very small but concrete paradise. He will transform his little piece of land on our large planet into a flourishing garden, giving a material embodiment to his spirituality, following God's example. If millions of people do this in a whole lot of countries, then the whole earth will become a flourishing garden. A father and mother who are actually creating a space of love for their children are more spiritual than the most celebrated wise men who only talk about spirituality. Let the spirit of each man spring up from the ground as a beautiful flower, a tree with fragrant fruit, and let this take place on every single hectare of our planet. And so that's why when I see this, people creating their domains in the United States, Europe, all these different countries, these people have taken the love that they feel in their heart and created a material thing that you can now interact with, right? And they have demonstrably changed the world, right? They've embodied their spirituality and they are living it in a true new way. They're actually building a whole new culture, right? And I'd encourage, anybody who hasn't read the books, obviously, go read the books to learn more about these things. There's only so much that I can say, especially in a short period of time. But watching this emerge, right? And even if you can't get land right now, I read the books 10 years ago. I still don't have a piece of land and I'm not building my domain. But even the fact that this thing exists in my thoughts is a thought that contributes so much more to mankind than what other people are aspiring to do in their lives, right? It's a very useful and life-creating thought. So keep dreaming and keep working towards getting your land and making this beautiful paradise, you know?
And I would argue that the amount of people you're inspiring by your work perhaps could supersede anything, one person could do on just one plot of land at the same time. And if we look at this as a living technology, this realm, and that we're all coordinates within this realm, doesn't it make sense that our embodiment being a replication or a fractal of the overall realm, which is an electrical toroid, which needs a south pole in order to, manifest on the ground? I mean, it's literal grounding in order to create a precipitation within the realm so that
Right.
we can all visualize the product of our thoughts, our emotions, and so forth, which I think is the purpose of. And why else would we be embodied if it wasn't to manifest in the first place? So the kinship concept is, really completing that technology,
Yeah.
and I think understanding our role in it in the first place.
You said it so perfectly, Bear. And to build on that, an idea that occurred to me that's so exciting about that, that quote that I just read, Vladimir says, give a material embodiment to our spirituality, following God's example. Which is a very interesting statement. But what he means there is that when God was creating the universe, it all existed in his mind as a dream, right? He thought of the birds and the water and the trees and the flowers and all these magnificent things. He thought of it, he dreamt it, and then he brought it into being, right? He materialized this beautiful place and this wonderful earth that we have. And then he said, I create, my son and my daughter, and I give this space, this beautiful dream that I've dreamt with love. I give this to them to then carry on, right? And essentially, when we create our domain, it exists first in our thoughts as a dream. It's a beautiful space that we intend to fill with life and beauty, right? And make it perfect. And then you have children there, right? So you give birth to and raise your children there. And we're literally demonstrably, step by step, following God's exact pattern of creation in our own lives, right? We're fulfilling our purpose as God's children to create in the exact same way that He did. Create this beautiful space in your mind, materialize it, give birth there, pass it on, and make it more and more perfect. We do exactly the same thing. And then we fill the planet with these beautiful little pieces of paradise, right? And what else are we gonna do? I don't know. It's the most, and some of this may sound fantastical to people. And Mike, we're talking about ending the technocracy. Like, this addresses absolutely every concern that anyone could possibly have. First of all, you're preserving the love in the family, right? She talks about how building this space will unite the man and the woman and make sure that this love doesn't forsake them. They have a joint creation that unites them. There's a lot that I could say about that. But then, you have a beautiful space full of healthy food, clean air, clean water, loving family, loving community. The average family plants several hundred and thousands of different plants on their 1 hectare. You scale that out to 300 families, you're planting thousands and millions of plants. You do that across the world. You've got regeneration, reforestation at scale that you don't need to bribe people to do. You don't have to pay them. It costs incredibly little money to do this, and people are intrinsically motivated to do it. And it's already happening. So it's an easily scalable model of turning this world into a beautiful garden, right? And addressing all of the problems that we have when people have their land and their food, they're not going to suffer from homelessness and all the unfortunate things that we have, unemployment, drug addiction, fighting families, and it's horrible stuff, right? But this is a direct solution to everything, and it's way beyond just some fantastical utopian idea. This is the most practical thing that we could possibly be doing. Get to the land, build a beautiful paradise around you, bring other people, do the same thing, give birth to your children in love, give them the space, and directly create the new generation. But anyway, I get really inspired about it. But I mean, the spiritual and the practical being completely balanced and brought into one here
Yeah.
is the really
Well,
exciting thing, you know?
I would challenge anybody to find one thing in creation that does not begin with an idea. In fact, Walter Russell said if there was never an idea, our earth would be barren. And then going back to our earlier
Amen.
comments, the idea manifests when we follow through, maybe put a little elbow grease into it. And the only thing that's stopped everything you're talking about or impeded it or slowed it down in any way is because our thoughts have been hijacked and we've let them be hijacked and that's the only reason why we have drug addictions and homelessness is because some people think it's a reality or think that we
Right.
can't have beauty.
We've allowed these conditions to exist, like
Mhm.
the creating domains and settlements, you remove the conditions that allow those symptoms to arise. Like, you can't have that in these places on a long enough time frame. Maybe the first generation of us, there's people who still, there's petty squabbles and things that happen. Total harmony isn't achieved, but you get there very quickly, very quickly. And yeah, it's an all-inclusive solution to every single problem that we face, the most practical thing we can do.
In book 6, Anastasia mentions how in the Vedic culture there was no theft, there was no crime, there was no trespassing because
Mm,
they were living in complete harmony and didn't need that because in nature, everything is abundant and giving. And the Kins domain actually acted as a self protecting infrastructure for the family. It was self aware. So if anyone tried to come in, and no one really think to do this because it thousands of years, it was just not a reality. But if someone did try to come in and like steal your food, it would be poison to them. And
yeah.
and so it's like it is a technology, right? It's the true technology. And it's interesting how she talks about too, like how the mother giving birth is to stay at her place, and that's her garden,
Hmm.
and that's the appropriate way to actually throughout the pregnancy to thrive, and the land will feed her the right food at the right time. And we're not even talking about
Yep.
like an apple versus an orange. We're talking about, as Bear was mentioning earlier, the qualitative nature of a specific apple on the same tree, how that has specific
Mm.
information for her at that time, and how when
Hmm.
you're in true, and so if you were to go to someone else's kin's domain, it's a total foreign environment because you haven't
Hmm.
raised that yourself and been in relationship to that natural the nature there. Really interesting stuff about gardening itself and like being in touch with how you garden on your own land and being in touch with the creative intelligence of the seeds. And we touched on that on the first show, like with putting the seed in your mouth and imparting your essence into it and then urinating on the plant as it's growing and all of these things. But it's so beyond the pathetic reductionist science that we currently have in the modern times of agriculture. It is such a brilliant, elegant, just genius truth around reality by just looking at how the gardening aspect works in a kin's domain. That to me alone is
Mm,
so exciting at what we can start implementing right away and how we work on our land.
And can
mm-hmm.
also be
Yes.
replicated in medicine, in law, in every facet of our institutions.
Yeah, and what I
Mm-hmm.
love, Bear, about doing this, we're doing this equity course right now through Sacred Honor Educational Fellowship, who is actually, they're doing they also have a four-part, we touched on this on a previous Alfacast with Marcia and Michael and Phil and everybody part of that crew, is that they're doing a four-part or a strategy around four different elements of protection within law, and one of those is the land patent, and then it's the private trust, it's equity, and then a national passport. And when you have all of those in place, then you're building like an infrastructure of protection around the land patent. Someone mentioned earlier in the chat how they knew of a fellow, and I've heard this a bunch, like, oh, I know of someone who had a land patent and was taken away by the IRS or by some government agency. Well, just because you have a land patent and you were able to go through that process by following a step-by-step process doesn't mean you have the full understanding of how equity and how law works. And law has been occulted in this occulted age, but law is universal. It is the underlying substructure of the reality, and everyone, including the dark magicians, must play by its rules. And so when you understand the rules of law, you will understand how to maintain that land patent so that it cannot be stripped from you when you know how you actually, how your true consent works and all that. So anyways, and all of this is in these books Anastasia talks about
Yeah.
in a brilliant way. It's all in there. It's amazing stuff, man.
Yeah. Yeah. And wow. Mike, what you were saying there is just so good to hear you talk about this. You say it in such a brilliant way, right? This direct connection with the plants. You're growing food that's for you, right?
Yep.
This apple tree knows you. It has interacted with you. It's growing fruit for you. It's more effective than any other thing that you could possibly eat. It's going to feed your soul, right? And all of these different plants, right? And Bear, I'm sure you guys have both experienced this directly, with your plants and everything that you guys grow. And there's so much. And talking about doing these things in reality, right? Like practical solutions. So our foundation, we're connecting all the people that have read these books and want to live this way. We're doing our best to do this around the world. I actually just a piece of news that you guys may not know is I just got all the remaining Ringing Cedars books in English donated to me by the previous publisher. So that's why I've got all these brand new books here. I've only got like
Wonderful.
3,000 books. We're selling them, but a lot of headway is being made in publishing the new editions. And through this, when the books sell again, and I was told by the previous publisher, they sold hundreds of thousands of copies all around the world. Things were going really, really big until some disputes arose between the author and the editor. That's neither here nor there. But once things go again, once we're publishing the books again in English, I think this movement is going to take off in a way that we have never seen before. And there's going to be many more people creating their domains and settlements. And we'll be talking about our foundation in the books. There's going to be pages where you can come and find different ways to connect with the community, connect with other readers. I've been building as well an international Kins domain settlement directory. I would love to share it with you guys real quick, a little sneak preview. I haven't even done this for my community. If I could show you guys. Um,
No, I'd love to hear that. Kids
yeah,
are
I think you guys would like
something
this.
that my wife and myself, reaching the next younger generation is kind of one of our focuses.
Hmm. Right. So pretty much one of the issues that existed with the movement before is that people weren't able to see the different settlements around the world. There's a whole bunch, like I said, outside of Europe and outside of Russia, right? And in Russia, they do a decent job at tracking them and making them easy to see. But I decided to build a whole new platform that we could use internationally. So it's not done yet. I've been developing this for some months, but you have your search filters. You can search by different countries and things. And then you have an interactive map here, and you have all these different listings of settlements. So galleries of photos, you can come through and look at all these different communities. So when the communities are forming around the world, or all the ones that have formed already, you'll be able to find them very easily, right? So you can come through and search through these different ones. I'm going to just click on one of these and show you guys. There's listing pages for each of these settlements here. There's probably a bit of a delay, so sorry about that. But you'll see these pages have all the different information about the settlements. There's ways to contact them and make this easier and faster for everyone, right? People can see which communities exist. They can find ways to join them easily. They can find all this information about them, and it's going to really help set things in motion more, make it easier to manifest this dream that Anastasia has set forth. So this is a little sneak preview. It's not done yet. I hope to have it done in the next couple months, but just a little thing there to show you guys. Oh, and there will also be a settlement founders group as well. So the founders and leaders of these communities will have a private group for people to come together and support each other. So connecting an international network of these communities and helping people, thrive and support them and share ideas on how to create their settlements and share experiences and things. So there's a lot that's developing. So we have the publishing of the books, we have this platform, all these other things. But yeah, that's just one thing I wanted to share, like making this real, right?
There's
Fantastic.
a huge yearning in our community for people seeking others that want to live like this, closer to nature. And God, we have a long list of folks that just want to come volunteer at the farm just to experience life like this. Um, how do how would folks go about that aren't coming from a more nuclear family position? It might be older,
Mhm.
single, still searching for
Yeah,
that mate. Is there a place
yeah.
for them? You have you have, I know you have your community page, maybe we could talk about, and we've got the Alfa
Hmm.
Vedic community, both using the same technology. But yeah,
Yep.
is there a solution for folks that are trying to get into this community that might not have they're not
Yeah.
young, they don't have the family coming out, they're out of the gates
Yep.
and everything?
Yep. And so this is and again, there's so much said about this in the books themselves. So if you guys haven't read the books, I definitely go check that out. But there definitely is, I mean, if people wanted to connect, we have different tools. Just go to anastasia.foundation and you'll see we have many different platforms where you can connect with different people. Tons of Telegram groups. We have a platform where you can try to find your soulmate and all this. But really, people ask that question a lot. Like, I'm older, or maybe I'm not going to be having kids, or my kids are adults already. And where do I fit into this idea? And you still fit in, right? Like creating a space of love, touching the earth with your hands directly, creating this loving connection with the earth and building paradise around you is for everyone at any time, right? I've heard stories in Russia. Vladimir was telling a story of like a colonel or something, like a retired colonel who was in his 80s in a wheelchair. And even though, he could barely walk and all this, he was doing what he could to, touch the earth with love and create this space. And he found new energy and new life within himself to continue, right? And there's been many stories of older people creating, their space of love around them and their younger children being drawn back, right? Being drawn back to them because now they have this place that the kids feel really good at, or they see that, oh, my father is doing something amazing, right? And I want to be a part of this, right? Or even, vice versa, the younger generations having a better relationship with their parents. Right now, my parents want to come visit me on this kin's domain because they love this and they say, "Oh, I want to be buried here when I die." Right? This has happened a bunch of times. Right? Please bury me under this apple tree. Right? When I pass away, instead of in a cemetery like a cesspool, of bodies and things. Um, but yeah, there's definitely a way for people with older children or people with no children or no family at all to come and fit in, right? All of us would do well to have this relationship with the earth this way and have this space for ourselves under any circumstance, you know?
And also have a place for the elders of society. You know, yeah, I come
Yeah,
from a different culture. You know, my ancestors are more immediately from the old country, and everybody just lived in an extended situation. So the old folks were valued and, you know, had a place to live. And now they're all
exactly.
in homes and everything. And being a geriatric myself, right now, so I'd like to see that sort of happen. Um, I'm on your website, the
Yep.
Anastasia Foundation. Are the books here somewhere? I'm having a hard time finding them.
Oh, okay. So, like I said, we recently got all the books donated to us. There's a store
Oh,
where you can
okay.
get
So they
them.
aren't on here yet.
Yeah. Yeah, so
Okay.
ringingcedersbooks.com, there's a store there,
Ah,
and it's
okay.
on the front page of our website. If you go to anastasia.foundation, either
Oh, okay.
way, you'll find it. But yeah, if anybody wants to get the books, they can get them there. I'm selling them at the lowest price that they've been at in years, just trying to make them available to people. When we publish the books in the future, I'm going to publish them at the lowest price I possibly can, something around 19.99 per book, just to make it affordable and easy for people, so that's what we're doing.
So ringingcedars.com. And
Ringingcedersbooks.com, but if you go to ringingcedars.com,
oh,
it'll
sorry, I
also
got it. Yeah.
redirect to our store.
Okay.
Yep.
It just
I
did it
know,
for
a
me.
bunch of
Yeah, I
URLs.
need
Sorry to
to.
confuse you guys.
No, no problem. I need to get a couple books. I've loaned a bunch out, so I need
Be-
to fill in some holes there and
Best
reread these
comment,
things.
best
We've
comment
got
in,
books 1 through 3.
I gotta say, best comment in chat right now by Mark. If Bear publishes the book, Be Geriatric Like Me, I'm buying it.
Be
Bear,
geriatric like
Bear.
me. I love it.
How much
That's
could
so
I
Geriatric,
charge
funny.
for
my
something like that?
ass. Yeah, how much I'll be juvenile and say $69. Um
Okay.
uh
I'll have one out tomorrow.
that's so cool, man.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
like
hilarious.
having the books readily accessible is super important, obviously. That's been the number one
Yeah,
sort of, complaint or whatever criticism we get is, and which is a great one. That means there's demand, right? We want
it's
the
true.
books. How do we get the books?
Yeah, it's true. There was a dispute between the old author, well, not the old author, but the author and the old publisher, which has been long standing, but I'm finally making headway on resolving all this, getting it all cleaned up, getting the books out again. And honestly, if you guys don't want to purchase the books, it's no issue to me. We have them available at the lowest price, but if you want to get them on PDF, well, you can go to anastasia.foundation/books. You can print them out yourself. There's a
Mhm.
README file in there that gives you a link on where you can print them out yourself for like $26 per book. And we've got all the books in there in PDF form. You want to read them on your e-reader, go ahead and do that. I'm all about getting them out in any way that we can. And yeah, if you love the books and you want to give out copies of like book one to your friends, we've got these gift sets, like big discounts on book one. So if you want to get people into the books, there's discounts on that. I don't want to seem like I'm coming across salesy. This is just all about as, getting the message out to people.
Yeah, of course.
Now people want them. Awesome. So what
Yeah.
haven't we covered that just to close up, we've been at it a while. I want to
Hmm.
respect your time, but this has been I could
Oh,
talk
I
about
love
this
this.
forever, but
I could talk with you guys all day.
where so is there anything that you'd like to speak on in closing that we haven't covered already?
Yeah, let me think. Let me look because I had a couple of things open. I think I touched on pretty much everything I wanted to share generally. Yeah, I think I got to everything I
I
wanted to
got a
share, but
question.
you
I got
know,
a question for you,
oh,
Gabe.
please. Yeah,
Where's any updates on Anastasia from Vlad, and has he seen her recently?
great question. Very good question.
Because that's the
Yep.
ultimate question. Is this really real?
Yeah. So
Or is Anastasia
Yeah,
an ascended master?
right. And I mean, is she really real? I mean, I can't. I think she's extremely real. She has put her whole self into the books, and anyone who is feeling with their heart and soul and reads the books is going to feel her right off. They're going to feel her right off. Her presence and her soul is in the books, and it would have been impossible for a single human mind to fabricate such a story and such
Yes.
information. Um, Absolutely unfathomably, just out of the question.
I agree.
So, and she also says for people, I exist for those for whom I exist, right? If she doesn't exist for you and her thoughts, then she doesn't exist, right? You shut her out. But if you feel it in your heart, then she's there, and it's very easy to pick up on. And so updates on Anastasia, yes. In 2021, they published a new version of book one, where Vladimir added 13 new chapters to the end of the book, and it's a continuation from the 10th book. So there's 13 new chapters. It talks all about Vladimir's their son, right,
Yeah.
and what he's doing, about Anastasia and what's going on with her. I translated those into English, and we're just sharing them. We're pirating them. Same link, anastasia.foundation/books. You can go in there and you'll see the new chapters. I'd suggest reading book 10 first and then starting those new chapters. But they're in there, and
Cool.
yeah, talking about the movement, and she had even made some comments during COVID. It seems like Vladimir had spoke with her during COVID, and she said that what you call coronavirus is created and launched by the energy of thought and submits to it. And she said that coronavirus will have a dialogue with humanity in the language of action. That's what she said about COVID.
Fascinating.
And
Well,
very
we
interesting.
know that was a big sort of stimulation into the new realm of awakening, right? That was the
Yeah.
initiation into where we're at now. So that makes a lot of sense. So that's that.
And
Those are in this one, right? Those additional chapters are in this version
It's book one, but
of the of with
this is
with.
not the updated version. That version only exists in the PDF that I shared.
Oh,
So if people want to go to that link, yeah. So when we republish the books, we're gonna be publishing a new version that has all those new chapters, plus doing a proper version of book 10, which was never really printed,
oh,
and
that's good to know. So
very few of
amazing.
these.
to read that updated stuff, it's only digitally accessible right now.
Only digitally. The only place you can get them
Ah,
is at that link that I said. Yeah, because there's never been any of those printed in English. So we want to get
well,
them out as fast as we can.
okay.
But
Yeah, I want to make
yeah,
sure I get that link in the show notes because I and selfishly want to read. I have
let
not
me
read
put it
those.
right here in the chat, and you guys
Okay.
can make sure that that gets in there.
Yeah.
Anastasia.foundation/books. And so,
There's a
yeah, please share that far and wide.
I will. There's a great also a little story at the end towards the end of book 6 where Vladimir is she's once again talking about how the master priest or whatever, what's his name again?
The high
The main
priest.
the high priest is in action and but is pretty much done. But he says, "Well, why don't you just use your ray right now? Because she's got this powerful mind ray that we all have if we know how to actually
Hmm.
focus it to destroy him and destroy the terrorists and
Hmm.
all that." And
Hmm.
I love this description because this is a counter
Yeah.
argument to all of the sort of patriots that want to take out,
Yep.
take out the control grid through,
Self-righteous
yeah,
anger.
through either voting harder or through bombs and missiles and guns and everything. But she said, if I can't do that because you cannot take out evil with evil, you cannot end corruption with a corrupt by corrupting my ray, essentially, because it would lead
Hmm.
to a further sort of growth of the evil, right? So the way that we
Hmm.
actually counter evil is through love. And it's obviously like the most kind of can sound so cheesy and overused, but that is the truth here, right? That is the profound
Right.
truth. As I'm
Yeah, it's
as I'm
such a good
wearing my
point.
Music and Sky Truth Love Freedom shirt, by the way. But But that's it. Truth, love equals freedom. The truth is the love, and that equals the freedom.
Right. You know what you're saying there, she said, I remember that I would have to generate this destructive energy within myself in order to
Yeah.
destroy him, the high priest. And she's like, I will never permit that to happen. Right? I won't do
Um,
that. Um, she's like, I could, but what would that make me? You know, I would just, and then she said, someone just like him would appear and nothing would be solved, you know. And it's such a powerful statement that doing it just through love is the way, right? Because this idea of self-righteous anger and justified anger is very attractive, right? But ultimately it is destructive to a degree. You know, if anger can spur you into action, that's good, but if it spurs us into destruction and hate, that's not useful at all, right?
and
That's not useful at
love,
all.
love is the ultimate Aikido technique because if you stay in that resonance, if the person that you are, let's just say, interacting with it is not coming in love, it's only going to return their energy to them. And so you can't have any thoughts of
Right.
doing so as an act of harm to them, but their own harmful thoughts will destroy them in the process. Or they have the option of changing their vibration at the same time. Yeah. But it's so
Right.
logical, energy, medicine,
Yeah.
everything that we're talking about, that if you're in that resonance, that thought, that feeling, where else can it register except within your own world? It's be impossible not to. So it's, I find it
Hmm.
incredible still that, the light bulb hasn't come on for all of us because we're not talking about real complicated concepts.
Mm-mm. No, these are extremely practical again, right? Like
Yeah.
love and family and the earth, and one thing, Mike, to your point, you were talking about what is the high priest doing now? Because sometimes people read the books and they think, oh, the priests are still active or the priests are still controlling everything. Well, the priests say themselves in the book, high priest says, I'm the one who is now thinking of how we can help her, how to put an end to this monstrosity of a system. We created a monster and it's stronger than us. The only thing I'm certain of is that we should be creating our own lifestyle according to the image outlined by Anastasia and pour all of our knowledge into our creations so that we ourselves become an example for people to follow, you know? So,
Mm.
you know, this is you take that if you believe it or not, you don't have to, but that's what's said in the books. So we are on a path towards um incredible beauty
You,
and life and light that we're going to see, you know?
you know what? That explains so much of the irrational chaos that we see in the fiction right now. It was like,
Oh
what
yeah.
is going on? Is there anyone controlling the ship of fools? And it's just basically just a ship that's been put out to sea that has no one controlling it. And it's just the chaotic monkeys that are bouncing all over it,
Yep.
and then the rats jumping ship. And that's what we're dealing with now. There is no one behind the rudder steering the ship.
Yeah, Anastasia said, what you see now in the media, she says it's the death throes of the dying system. You know, it's
Mhm.
the death throes of this dying technocracy. And it's just gonna keep continuing that way. Like, you know, a lot of people get really overstimulated by these things that they see in the media, and they're always worried about like what's the next crazy thing that the
Yeah.
powers that be are gonna do to us, right? And it's like we know the general direction that the dark forces are headed in. More control, more oppression,
More
more
chaos.
darkness, more suffering. So like why be surprised when we continue to see it unfold, right? It's just at a certain point it's good to be aware of what's happening in the world, but like to let it affect us in a way where it distracts our energy from creation, from life, right? Becomes you know, that can be a challenge, you know, to manage that.
Yeah. Blessings to that.
Yeah.
And I
I
think
think
that's
Kamala's going to fix things for us.
oh yeah, she's the one. For sure, the one, and her vice president Oprah,
Wow.
maybe. Uh, so yeah,
Ah,
or Big
man.
Mike. Big Mike might step in.
I hope she makes
Uh,
me laugh more than Biden did because Biden was just pathetic to watch. Trump made me laugh, But
Yeah, that's what the whole
Biden
point of the
was
president
just
is to
tough.
have decent Saturday Night Live sketches. I mean, that's
Yeah,
gonna,
right. So
you know,
Kamala
um,
might be better than Biden. He was tough to watch.
well, talk about bio robots or just pure robots now. But yeah, we stress that to our audience and to our community. Enjoy the show, as Stacy said in chat. Get the popcorn out, and
Yeah,
laugh at it. Humor is so important. We had Owen Benjamin on a few episodes ago. I know you're. I don't. You're active in the bear community, right? And see that as another great
met
sort
some
of
bears.
parallel, right, movement that's actually very similar, right, to, even though I wouldn't call Owen a mystic in the woods by any means, but the bears themselves are doing a
God bless
lot
him.
of the same thing, going back to land, focusing on family,
Yeah,
getting in touch with their independence through decentralization and self-determination, and that the Alpha Vedic
right,
community is the same way. The Music and Sky community, things that like Tom Barnett's doing over, in Australia, and so it's great. Like you're saying, and Anastasia is saying, it's happening. People are doing it. These communities are coming together. We
right,
may seem like a small minority, but the field is being impacted in ways that is so massive that I do believe it's going to be like that change all of a sudden. So, um,
right. It's always the small minority that takes the action, right? There's, a small amount of people who feel internally motivated to do things and to think in this way. And then once they set an example, once people start seeing more domains and more settlements across the Western world, people will start to catch on, right? And Anastasia says the glad tidings of these settlements will spread across the world and will start to change people's perception, right? Like, so just whoever is out there who is working towards these things, whether you're like me, 10 years and you still don't have land, just keep going, don't let your dreams die. Keep going. You are valuable. Your thoughts and energy and contribution is so valuable. Never give up. Life itself will bless you and help you make those things happen, and just keep going because it's so needed. People need good, peaceful, loving, inspired examples, and be that example, whether it's wherever you are. If you're in the city, have a beautiful garden around you, have some plants inside your apartment building, plant some trees in little pots and put them in your windowsill. Do whatever that you can to bring more beauty to this plane, because everything is good and needful, and it's gonna happen. It's all gonna happen. And I love what you guys do in making these things happen. Again, I'm so glad to know you guys and be on this, because you guys do it in such a, sincere and straightforward and clear way, which I really like a lot. And just great to be here.
Well, likewise, and thank you so much again for being here. And I know our alignment will continue and strengthen, and look forward to working with you more directly. We'll maybe talk about that more again behind the scenes. And just to echo
Definitely.
what you're saying, any alignment with natural design, you're drafting the entire universe. Anything that is not in alignment with natural design has no ability to sustain itself. So it's a done deal. Or you could just default to that old saying, "One with God is a majority." So here we are.
Mm, amen.
Great
Yeah.
way to finish it off, guys. Ending on a high note of a high note of a high note. This whole show's been in a high note. So I'm literally
Mm.
high. So thanks so much, Gabe. High on life, baby. High on love.
Amen.
And guys, go to anastasia.foundation, join the community there. And you can join the meetups and find other readers in your area. It's really fantastic. All the work you've done with that,
Yeah.
Gabe. And
Online, in-person events. We just had July 23rd is a big Ringing Cedars holiday. We just had events on all around the world.
oh, that's
Um,
right. Get the
and
table out with
yep,
all the great food and yeah,
yep,
I would love to attend one of those sometime. Sound like a good
yeah,
time.
definitely. Yeah,
And
we'd
as we've
love to
been
have you.
talking, I've got all my downloads complete.
There you
Like
go.
from Anastasia, she's been beaming into your
Yeah.
head.
The books.
Uh, yeah. maybe I don't need to download them. Yeah, but they're all on my desktop now, so that's awesome.
Oh,
I
great.
love it. And there's a little README file there that's got some a little bit of detail and stuff. But all those books are searchable too. You can control F in those PDFs and find anything you ever think of. So really good reference
Oh, neat.
material
Awesome.
for anyone. Yeah, I made them
Pretty cool.
searchable. It's been really, really useful. Yeah,
Awesome.
awesome. Yeah,
Oh, well,
join our events, read the books, um, you know, spread love in your community, and yeah, everything is going to be beautiful. So. Thank you guys, and thanks for letting me share about this, here. And yeah, go read the books if you haven't. Life-changing, will set your heart on fire and make you feel really good. So definitely go read the books.
and support
Sweet.
the foundation and everything that you're doing, guys. I assume you probably have a donation link. It's I don't know if you've done like gone to private stuff
Yeah.
and done all that, but
Oh yeah, we're an unincorporated church.
okay.
And I've got all that set up. We're all good. So yeah, Anastasia.foundation/gift. We're building the infrastructure for the Ringing Cedars movement in the English speaking world, finding effective ways to connect people in person, online, publishing the books. We're also going to be selling cedar oil. There's the Kins Domain Settlement Directory, Founders Group, other projects, which I can't even talk about yet, but absolutely everything we possibly can do to support readers, we are doing and will continue to do. Oh, look at that beautiful
And
pendant that Wesley gave you. Yeah, I
Wesley
love
hooked me
that.
up with some ringing cedar uh, uh, from, is this from Russia here?
That's that's a Siberian cedar. Yep, that's from
Yeah.
I believe that's a branch right there of Siberian cedar.
Siberian cedar.
Yeah.
And I
Yep.
will
Yep.
continue. The cord broke on it. I got to get a new cord, but I will continue to massage it every morning with intention until it becomes marbled, like in the books.
Yeah, I have a few that have changed color. I don't know, you can probably not see them, but I've
Yeah,
got some
yeah.
dark cedar pendants here. You see all the way on the back here. These have become quite dark. I've been wearing this one for like 10 years and
Amazing.
yeah, they do change color. My wife has one and she never rubbed it with her fingers and the whole thing turned like this beautiful auburn, like
Mm.
red and orange, all on every direction, like deep like colors. And yeah, get a cedar pendant if you guys don't have one. They're amazing. But yeah, come join our community. And thank you guys for having me here. Hopefully, I'll see any of the people here viewing at an event or somewhere in the future.
Beautiful. Okay, well, thanks so much, Gabe. Everybody go support him on the website there and the foundation and Anastasia and Vlad and all the great work that Vlad's done. You
Amen.
you read sometimes like how did this character get chosen, but he's been a fitting
Yeah,
he's in the end been a perfect vesicle for this because he represents both sides of the equation. And
right.
yeah, props to everything that he's done, of course. Props to you, Gabe, and everybody. Wes, shout out to Wes, who was on the first show with us, and everything everyone in your team's been doing. It's just fantastic.
Thank you
And
guys.
yeah, look forward to seeing you in person sometime soon. Remember, guys, to get outside,
I
get
look
your feet
forward
in
to it.
get outside, get your feet in the dirt, go plant something, go jump into your garden, get it going, go hug a tree. We end this, we end every episode with that, and it's the true solution,
Hmm.
right? It really is. So,
Hmm.
uh, okay,
Yeah.
guys, love you. We'll see you next week. Enjoy your
Thank you,
weekend.
everybody.
Cheers.